This video is by Straight Goods News, SGNews.ca.
We're here this morning to talk about a very unfortunate decision made in CFB Borden to actually get rid of a cleaning contract, which employs 110 workers who actually clean the base and keep it clean. The contract is not being renewed as of December 31st. People who work on that base are being laid off. They're not being replaced. The work is going to be piled on to existing some 70 workers who are already there, and they're going to be asking soldiers and people who live on the base to do their own cleaning. This is a very wrong-headed decision, we believe, resulting in severe employment losses for 110 people who worked there for many years, and living in a town nearby, Camp Borden, that has very, very little opportunities for other employment. I'd like to ask John MacLennan to give a little more background about this situation. It's devastating for these employees. They don't make a lot of money. I think the wage is $12 an hour, but it's extremely important to the individuals who work there. Their individual stories are heartrending, and it's an unnecessary cutback to a needed service for a very important
Our union
base.
represents approximately 19,000 public service employees and contract workers at national defence establishments across Canada. Our union members perform a variety of functions in support of their military colleagues. Civilian employees of the Department of National Defence have been amongst the hardest hit in the ongoing cuts to the public service, and now these cuts are having a ripple effect. I am here today to explain how the most recently announced cuts impact not only D&D workplaces, but how these cuts also have a lasting effect on our communities. Specifically, I'm here today to talk about 120 contract cleaners whose services at CFB Borden have decided and are no longer required. The Minister of National Defence and the base commander will tell you that they are not laying off these people. However, it is the decision not to extend this contract is a direct result of the Conservative government's imposed cuts on the Department of National Defence. And because this decision 120 cleaners affected, we are all affected. The Conservative government has said front office jobs will remain unaffected. Yet these 120 cleaners are the very people who allow front office workers to work efficiently. Canadian Forces Base Borden plan is that the current 75 public service cleaners will pick up the work of the laid off 120 contracted cleaners. No cleaners will be hired because of the imposed staffing restrictions. This means 75 people will take on the responsibility currently being accomplished by almost 200 people. CFB Borden leadership suggests that building and office occupants will assist being responsible for the cleanliness of their own spaces. It is expected that everyone, regardless of their primary job, could be responsible for day-to-day cleaning, snow removal, and emergency cleaning. Forecasted reductions overall on the number of times per week facilities will be cleaned is unacceptable and creates a health and safety concern. People will be diverting their resources to doing routine cleaning tasks instead of working on their own assigned files and primary responsibilities. I am here because Canadians have a right to know the real story about the economic impact these cuts will have on the communities of Agnes, Barrie, and Borden. Small communities similar to these throughout Canada. Over the weekend, this past November, some of our members, those workers who will lose their job, collected their shopping receipts. They did this to demonstrate their financial contributions to the local economy. And to demonstrate the economic impact these job losses and lost earnings will have on the community. Based on those receipts, by our calculations, over $200,000 will be taken out of the local economy each and every month. That's almost $2.5 million a year that will not be spent in the communities and the surrounding areas. These workers have families, friends, neighbors, and are customers to the local business community. These are members of the community. They volunteer and belong to local organizations. The public must be aware of the real economic consequences of government cuts to this community. These contracted workers do not work for the base. They work for a contractor who provides a service to the base. This contract is worth $3.7 million, minuscule in comparison to what National Defence spends overall on an annual basis. Therefore, we are asking the local Member of Parliament, Kelly Leach, to concede that the government cuts are wrong and they are impacting everyone, not just the federal public service workers. These cuts to our local communities affect us all.
The cuts are all affecting individual workers. I have here a local story from the Barrie Examiner, featuring one of these workers who says, you know, she's a 6-year employee of this base. She's told her job is cut. She's worked as a cleaner. It's extremely important to her. 49-year-old woman whose husband is on workers' compensation. We're so far behind. This is just going to bring me to tears. People don't know how they're going to carry on. These are not people who are making tons of money, but it's extremely important to them and their families, and important to the base that this work be done. This is a base that houses some 2,000 people, combination of civilian and military employees. It has military medical facilities. I think my colleague Christine Moore will elaborate a little bit on that. It's very important. It has educational facilities. It has training facilities. This is a primary training base for the Canadian Forces, and keep health and sanitation is extremely important. And you just can't say, well, we now have 200 people maintaining health and sanitation on a Canadian Forces base, and now that work is going to be done by 75 people. That's just not going to work, and there's going to be repercussions. This is a wrong decision, and we're calling on the government to reverse it.
The 110 workers are being laid off, and the 75 public service workers.
110 or 120, I think we...
120.
120. I might have said 110, yeah. But 120 is the number, yeah.
And it seems to me that there are likely contracts like this across Canada at different bases. Are those contracts also being examined for cuts, or do you know what's going to happen there for sanitation?
Well, the department is examining how many contracts to get out there. They're looking at $450 million valued in contracts that they're going to get rid of. But this is not something they're doing because the work's going away. They're not going to get out of the business of cleaning buildings. And these people only make $12 an hour. I mean, with a $22 billion budget the department has, this is minuscule as far as the savings they're going to achieve at $3.5 million.
It's kind of ironic, it seems to me, if they're looking at these kinds of contracts to get rid of. We saw General Andrew Leslie last year write a report, the transformation report, and he complained about the $3.7 million worth of contracted out work that he thought could be reduced. He wasn't talking about people cleaning bases in Camp Borden or Base Borden. He was talking about the kind of contracts that, particularly at NDHQ, where you have people who've been senior personnel who are retired one day and are back the next day as contractors. So contracted services for things that could be done within or was already being done. And he said that there was a bloated National Defence Headquarters, $3.7 billion a year. He thought it could be reduced by 1/3 over a period of 3 years. What it sounds to me like with John's comments and what he's hearing is that the kind of contracts that they're focusing on are ones that involve ordinary folks who are doing the work that keeps the bases going, that are clean. Now, they contracted them out years ago, and there was an argument about that. But those services are necessary. They're being provided by people who need the income to support their families, living in communities around our bases, like in Angus and Barrie, and that there's not a lot of job opportunities there. This is an important job for a family as part of a family income. These are usually, the second working person who's working to ensure the family has sufficient income to be able to support themselves and try to have a decent life. This is a hurtful decision that appears to be unnecessary and maybe arbitrary, and maybe something that they'll have to reverse. But in the meantime, they're inflicting pain upon individuals, reducing the services to the base, and at the same time, they're saving a small amount of money. whether they'll actually save that money or not, I don't know. They may have to give overtime to the people that are there in order to do the job to keep the place clean. You can't have a hospital service or a medical facility or educational facility with without proper cleaning and sanitation. It's just not going to work, and it remains to be seen how they think it is going to work. I believe this is the decision of the base commander, maybe within that person's purview, but it's something that we think ought to be reversed, and we want the local member of parliament, as John has said, to get involved in this, and for the department to look at it and seek to reverse it.
We're looking for alternative work. I was just informed yesterday that we have one person who works for a defense research establishment that has found employment in the United States. That's a pretty specific type of job. So, now we're losing Canadian workers to the American government, which, this isn't a well thought out strategy. You have core positions. These are not the back office jobs that the finance minister articulated in the budget. Radiation safety officers, hazmat coordinators. This is all compliance jobs that the department must rely on. So these are specialty trades. And some of these jobs, like the cleaners, are the lowest paid workers in all of government.
What's the morale like for a lot of your membership?
Well, these members in Borden, they're wondering what kind of Christmas they're going to have. I mean, the Grinch is going to come down. They're going to come downstairs in the morning. The Grinch has arrived in November by making a decision by laying off these workers. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Mental health is really becoming an issue inside the department, right across the federal department. But in national defense, they never closed any bases. They never shrunk the size of the military. So they know the work's not going to go away. Who's going to replace these workers? If I'm left behind as a worker, I'm going to have to pick up the slack because my colleague was laid off. And that's not fair to some of these workers that have been around for 30, 35 years, and they're a product of the 90s. They understand what these cuts mean to national defense and how far it went, and ill-fated and how not well thought it was in the 90s, and they see the same thing unfolding.